McLaren has finally spoken, and the moment they broke their silence, it became clear that the Las Vegas disaster was far worse than anyone imagined. Their response wasn't defensive, it wasn't diplomatic, and it certainly wasn't the typical corporate smoothing over fans are used to. It was the admission of a team caught off guard by shocking new evidence that exposed a structural failure inside their operation at the exact moment when the championship fight is most fragile. What looked like a simple technical breach has now unfolded into a far deeper problem, one that McLaren themselves admit was triggered by behavior in the car they did not detect in practice or did not understand during the race, and only fully realized once the FIA's measurements left them with no room to breathe. Their explanation shows just how serious the situation truly is. McLaren revealed that both cars suffered extreme porpoising and unexpected floor movement throughout the race, a violent instability that shaved away millimeters from the plank until it fell below the legal limit. This wasn't a tiny miscalculation or bad luck. It was an operational blind spot that escalated in real time and exploded after the checkered flag when the FIA's new evidence confirmed both cars illegal by fractions of a millimeter. That is why the team's reaction feels different. This is not a one-off mistake. It is a warning signal that something inside the organization failed at the worst possible moment. And now the consequences reach far beyond Las Vegas. Disqualification has ripped points away from both drivers, thrown Verstappen back into the title fight, and left McLaren fighting to contain a crisis triggered by their own setup decisions. Their silence is gone, their explanation is out, and the pressure on the final 2 rounds has just skyrocketed. If you want to know exactly what McLaren admitted, why this new evidence changes everything, and how it reshapes the championship, make sure you stay until the end, because the full story is even bigger than the headline. McLaren's full explanation, combined with the new telemetry evidence, paints a picture far more alarming than a simple setup error. The team has effectively confirmed that multiple systems were pushed to the extreme in Las Vegas, and the consequences collided in the worst possible way. The fresh data from Norris's final laps proves that the car was not behaving within the expected performance window. His sudden 4-second drop-off wasn't random, emotional, or tire-related. It was mechanical and strategic, triggered by an urgent attempt to save fuel after McLaren misjudged consumption trends across the race. On the long straights, where he should have been flat out at over 330 kilometers per hour, the traces show clear throttle lifts, sustained coasting, and early braking. By the time he reached turn 10, where he'd previously carried over 300 kilometers per hour, his apex speed had collapsed dramatically. The team believes this was the only way to protect the 1-liter mandatory fuel sample required by the FIA. It's a striking revelation. Norris was saving one regulation while unknowingly breaching another. When this telemetry is laid next to the plank measurements, the story becomes even more coherent. A car saving fuel late in the race typically sits slightly lower on track as the tank empties. A lower fuel load means the car rides closer to the ground, amplifying porpoising, floor oscillation, and skid plank wear. McLaren's initial ride height calculation didn't account for the violent bouncing revealed in the race, and the late race fuel saving likely contributed to an even harsher bottoming out effect. This combination of factors helps explain why both cars fell below the 9mm threshold by fractions of a millimeter. The numbers may seem small, but in Formula One, 0.04 millimeters is enough to erase an entire weekend. The team has also confirmed that accidental damage was found on both floors after the race, worsening the oscillation problem. McLaren's silence-breaking statement indirectly admits this. Their apology was not routine. Stella addressed not just the drivers, but the partners and fans. Rare in a world where technical DSQs are usually brushed aside as unfortunate or procedural, the team acknowledged the psychological and competitive damage inflicted at the worst possible time. 2 races and a sprint remaining. Every marginal gain and every fractional error now carries championship-level implications. Aaron knew that another weekend like Las Vegas would not just cost points. It would hand the title to Verstappen without resistance. The team's engineers now face a forensic investigation into why their modeling of porpoising did not match race reality, why floor damage was not detected earlier, and why the fuel calculations put Norris in such a precarious state. These are not small concerns. These are the foundations of a title challenge. And the new evidence, telemetry, gap charts, throttle traces, and FIA measurements shows that Las Vegas was not an isolated incident, but a convergence of several misaligned variables. In a sport where margins define outcomes, McLaren pushed their car so close to the edge that one unpredictable track surface tipped everything into illegality. The upcoming rounds now carry more pressure than at any point this season. Norris must defend a shrinking lead. Piastri must launch a comeback he didn't choose. Verstappen must simply wait for another crack in McLaren's armor. And McLaren must deliver perfection mathematically, mechanically, strategically. Las Vegas has exposed how vulnerable they become when even one calculation is off. If they misjudge again, even by a fraction of a millimeter, this championship slips away. In the end, what happened in Las Vegas leaves McLaren with no room to hide and absolutely no margin left to gamble. The data, the measurements, the fuel traces, the porpoising, the damage, every piece of evidence points to a team that crossed the fine line between ambition and instability. Norris and Piastri delivered the performances needed for a championship fight, but the car beneath them simply wasn't built to survive the realities of the Vegas circuit. And now, with Verstappen closing in and the final 2 rounds approaching at frightening speed, McLaren face a moment of truth that will define their entire season. They can't change what happened. They can't recover the points they lost. All they can do now is confront the flaws exposed in Vegas, tighten every screw, trust the data, and give their drivers a car that stays both fast and legal. Because from this point forward, perfection isn't optional. It's the only thing keeping their title hopes alive. And if McLaren want to prove they're ready to fight for a world championship, Qatar and Abu Dhabi will be the places where they must show it.